amazing. So does everybody know who Andrew Wyeth is? Okay. Well, I'm going to, you know, these artists have such complex lives, and there's only so much you can tell the kids in 10 minutes that they'll listen to. So I focused on, you know, him as a child, and then, you know, a few things throughout his life that are important. And then you guys are welcome to, you know, add on, watch videos, whatever you want to do to learn a little bit more. What I'm reading from tonight will be in all the art boxes. And I'm going to have visuals. I have them all here. I'll put them in the art boxes as well. So when you teach Andrew Wyeth, you can ultimately show the kids different pictures of his, and you know, we'll go from there. So Andrew Wyeth was born July the 12th, 1917. He died January 16th, 2009. So he's relatively new. I mean, he was alive just till a couple of years ago. And he died at age 91 in his sleep. Imagine that. That's pretty cool, right? Andrew Wyeth was the youngest of 5 children. His father was N.C. Wyeth. It's Newell Converse Wyeth. And he was a famous artist and illustrator. He created illustrations for books such as Treasure Island and Last of the Mohicans. So he was a big deal. He was a famous illustrator in his day. And his mother was Carolyn Bacchius Wyeth. I think that's how you pronounce that. It's Carolyn Wyeth. Okay, so Andrew was born and grew up in Chadds Pennsylvania. Most of his artwork was inspired by his life and the people he knew in Chadds. And then later in life, his art would be inspired in the same way by his time spent in Cushing, Maine. He had a summer home there. It is said that Andrew Wyeth was part of the first family of American painters. In their family, most everyone painted and was successful in their artistic and creative mediums. So they had artists, musicians, and even inventors in the family. This creative spark of Wyeth household was nurtured and taught by a very enthusiastic father, N.C. Wyeth. He had a big personality. You know, he was an illustrator of all these cool books and things, and he had a personality to fit that. So by the time Andrew Wyeth was 10, he knew that painting would be his life's work. Art seemed to be inside me, he said. He spent hours drawing pictures of knights, pirates, cowboys, you know, soldiers, things that our kids like to draw these days even. Andrew, when he was 13, his father, N.C., gave him his first watercolor set, and he began painting watercolored landscapes in the orchard behind his father's studio. At first, he was timid and slow. N.C. said to him, "Andy, you want to explode on the thing." So, you know, that was really, no, that's fine. That was really a big deal because, you know, there is this kind of freight train of a father that would inspire them in this way. So, and he said he followed his father's words, and then he painted like part of the sky very quickly and very bravado. So his father really taught him at a young age. And Andrew Wyeth did not go to a formal school. He didn't go to, you know, Waterman Elementary or State Street. He actually stayed home. And on October of 1932, at age 15, his father took him into his studio and began formal art lessons. So he was only taught art. For 2 years, he studied like I'm doing, studied under his father, learning figure study and watercolor painting. He also studied art history, and he admired many of the masters of Renaissance. But he also admired the American painters, specifically Winslow Homer and Edward Hopper. And then later in his life, he mastered painting in egg tempera. This is the medium that some of his greatest pieces would come out of. And that's essentially making paint with egg yolk, distilled water, and powdered pigments, and it's painted on a gessoed board. A lot of things happened to him in October. It was kind of strange when I was going through this. October 19th, 1937, at age 20, Andrew's first major show opened up at the Macbeth Art Gallery in New York City. It featured his first great collection of watercolors. Okay, so this is referenced, and I'll have the image for you. It's called The Lobsterman in 1937. It's in the book here, but you'll have it in the box with you. It was a huge success. Okay, over a few days, every piece sold out. It was a first for the gallery. So this was a big deal. It was New York City, and this time, you know, in his 20s, he would refer to as his blue sky period. Okay, and when you see it, you'll see that some of the images, you know, it had a loose feel, bright colors. He used blues and things like that. I'll show you a quick picture of it in this book. I actually got this book at the Greenville Art Museum. It's pretty cool. Kind of a, I had it marked, I lost it. But I can show you here, you know, this is what it looked like. So his early watercolors were, you know, blues, kind of loose, not very detailed, brightly colored, and, you know, lots of contrast. And that's going to lead us to what the kids are going to do in the class. So these are the types of watercolors that he took to the Macbeth Gallery in New York. That was in 1937. In the summer of 1939 in Cushing, Maine, Andrew met for the first time his future wife-to-be, Betsy James, okay? She was the daughter of a newspaper editor that he had met. And Betsy would play a huge role in his life from this moment to the time of his death. Betsy would ultimately be the person who would introduce Andrew to Christina Olson. Now, she was a crippled woman living in Maine with her brother Alvaro. And they lived in this old, really crappy house in Maine. And he grew to like them. I mean, he was almost like family to them, and they allowed him to paint them. And it would be, one of his most famous paintings is of Christina Olson, and it's called Christina's World. It's a picture of Christina crawling up a hill. She was a cripple, as he describes her. And it was purchased by the Museum of Modern Art. This is a picture of Christina's World. You've probably seen this. Or maybe you haven't. But, you know, drew lots of criticism. You'll have a visual of this for the kids too in the box. But this was really one that he's quite famous for.
Why did it drop criticism?
Well, that's a great question, and I can't really fully answer all the criticism from it. The Museum of Modern Art purchased this piece, and I guess the main criticism was they didn't feel that it should be hanging in the Museum of Modern Art. They thought it didn't have the, you know, really the elements of, you know, the abstract type things that were hanging in the museum. So it got a lot of criticism for that. But, you know, they would go to the museum, and outside of all the critics, it would always be packed, and people would always be looking at this piece of artwork. So as much as he was criticized, he was also very praised and really was loved by a lot of people, and still is, absolutely. And you know, he was one of these artists that, you know, his art goes for millions and millions, and he was a living artist. So he really climbed up on the mount, you know, as a living artist, and kind of reached the top, even before his death. So on the morning of October 19th in 1945, tragedy struck. N.C. Wyeth and his grandson were killed when a train hit his car while stalled on the tracks. And this was a major turning point in Andrew's life and his painting style. You know, in his 20s, he started, you know, very free, very non-specific, and he was painting, the scenes from his life, which he continued to do. But you'll see the mood kind of changes. It goes from lighter, brighter to darker colors and pieces. So you'll see that. But so Andrew grieved over the loss of his father. It would change his life in painting forever. He said, "I don't think a father and a son could have had a warmer relationship. I loved the thing he loved." So, you know, that tells you, man, they were close. He was this big personality. He really was a great father to his kids, and that was a huge loss for him, and it really affected his painting. However, after the death of his father, his wife Betsy had an influence on Andrew that was as strong as his father's. Andrew says of Betsy, "She's made me into a painter that I would not have been otherwise. I had severe training with my father, but I had more severe training with Betsy." So his wife stepped into this father role, essentially, and she was essentially the business end of his painting career. She really put him out there and got him where he needed to be, and had a great influence because she would challenge him, as most wives do. You know, she would challenge him. It's the damn truth, right? She would challenge him, and no, these are all great things. She would ask him why he painted something the way that he painted it. You know, why did you paint it this color as opposed to that color? And he would, you know, be challenged by her. So Betsy played an important role in managing his career, as I just said. She was once quoted as saying, "I am a director and I had the greatest actor in the world." So that just tells you that she was really there and very involved in his career. The pair would have 2 children, Nicholas, born in 1943, and James, or Jamie, in 1946. Jamie Wyeth, who's still alive today, would follow in the footsteps with both his grandfather and father to become the 3rd generation of Wyeth artists. So now his son, Jamie, who's still alive, still paints. And he is a contemporary type realist artist. Very good, a little different, but also a lot the same. So, you know, they've had a huge art career as far as through 3 generations. And that's why people say, hey, they're the first family of American painting. So those are the main highlights that as we go through his career that I want you to point out. He had some other parts that were not really for the classroom. You know, he painted Helga, the Helga paintings, which were very controversial. This was a nurse of one of his neighbors in Chadds Ford, Carl Kerner, and he did a series of nudes of her. And they are absolutely impressive paintings. There's some in this book tonight, but you know, that's not really anything we want to bring into the classroom, although it's fantastic. And then he had, you know, the Kerners, which is another part of his life. But he also, you know, in conclusion, Andrew Wyeth has been and has become one of the most famous and influential American painters. He has faced a magnitude of criticism and praise for his works throughout his life. He has done a brilliant job of capturing the story of his life on canvas. Wyeth often noted, "I paint my life." His awards and accolades are many, and he was the first painter to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1963. So that's a high honor for a painter to receive. And he's received a whole list. I mean, there's so many. It's neat to look and see how many he has done. So what I want to do with this project is keep it simple. This is going to be a watercolor type project, okay? And I want to present the paintings of Andrew Wyeth to the kids. Encourage them to paint in watercolor in the style of Wyeth, okay? They can emulate paintings from his blue sky period, like the Lobster Bin of 1937, this one that I first showed you. That's very, you know, bright for Wyeth and loose, so they could do something like that. Or they could paint other pictures like Wyeth had done. This one is one of my favorites. This one is called Roasted Chestnuts. And, you know, kind of subdued colors. This was after the death of the father, but just very powerful. I think it's really cool, and of course the color here is probably nothing like the real thing. Contrast. We want to focus on, let me get back to my script here. The important message is that they should use lots of contrast that create deep emotion to the viewer. The subject matter should be a person, place, or thing or moment in their life that is deep, that has deep meaning to them. And they are painting their life. Okay? So our goal here is to do a watercolor painting using colors with sharp contrast. Not a lot of washed out things. I want dark, sharp contrast. And I want them to paint a person. They might paint their parents or a cousin or whatever. You know how they've been doing. They'll probably stay on the same mode. Or a memory. Wyeth was big into, his father was big into holidays. They celebrated Halloween and Christmas. So, these are all things that they could, a memory or something that they could paint. But I want it to be full of emotion, very dark contrast or sharp contrast. And see what they come up with.
How would you define contrast to like a first grader?
So light and dark, these are...
Having elements of, or like...
Yeah, so
both
this
light
is,
and dark
this is called Night Sleeper. I've got these prepared for my boards. So this will be blown up as an image, but that's called Night Sleeper. So, dark contrast where you have a dark room, a dog sleeping, and the moonlight coming in. Or where the sun shines on a face, and then you have, darkness in the background. Let's see. That's even in this picture, even in that picture, the one I showed you of the lobsterman, that's not dark, but you've got the dark blues here, the darker blues here, but there's contrast with the boat.
We talked a little bit about it too, and with the photography, how there was the
Absolutely.
contrast of the light and the dark and the shading and the use of, so that they might pick up on that a little bit, but we could refer to that for sure.
He used a lot of, he's full of, he painted winter in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania. Nothing's great about that, but there is sharp contrast and it shows mood and emotion. So anything, even that. He painted, this is a physician friend that he had. Look at the darkness of her shirt with the lightness of her face. Yeah, so there's an emotion created there. Or with the dinghy and the guy. So I'll have plenty of these visuals in.
The trickiest part is being able to do that in watercolor.
Well, these were done in watercolor.
That's what I mean, yeah, that's incredible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I have to
And that
emphasize
is-
that to the
Why-
kids.
Yeah, don't use a thing of like a huge.
Because it's so like,
Because
It
the
just
water can
goes.
mute it.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there's another one. See, with the blue door and the dark and the sunlight coming in.
Get the color
Is
concentrated enough
Yeah.
for the
Exactly.
water.
Don't let them try to
Exactly. Less
because
water.
You want to like. and-
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
nice blue door with the
Yeah.
sunlight and the darkness.
Without getting technical though, are you gonna explain to the kids if you put a dark color on, you can't lighten it up? You better start with the light colors, or you're just gonna let them figure that
No,
out?
I'm going to see, but see, that's quite the contrary of what Wyeth, how he painted. Sometimes he painted like he started dark, and then he got lighter. So I would like to see the kids, translate that in their own mind. Some are going to nail it, and some are going to fail at it.
I just want to give them a lot of water.
But it's okay.
Because it would just go like
the
this.
tiniest
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah,
That's all you can have.
But he also took and flung water on his paper. Like his father said.
We will
Get
not
after
have
it. Get after it. And
well, there's all the table covers there, and
And this is not the acrylic, so it will
Yeah,
wash off with a
right.
one swipe of it. So, I want to focus on contrast and mood and emotion. And however they do that, they either do it or they don't. But, when you're walking around and they're painting, stress that. Show them these pictures.
Mhm.
And I'll have the good ones out so, you know, it'll be easy for them to see what you're talking about.
Maybe
So you
if
don't
you
have
have
to spell
something to
it out.
dab it, if it gets too much water,
Yeah,
like a
always-
paper
Oh,
towel,
a lot of
you know,
people
just
do
dab
that.
it up so it's not
And
gonna.
do you think they
Yeah.
should sketch it out first,
cotton balls.
especially
Yeah.
with a
Mhm.
memory?
That's a good idea though,
Just-
to have absorbent paper towels, because you go in the classroom and it's all the
Yeah.
the brown ones.
Yeah,
that
and they don't do
sudsy.
anything.
They're
And
all-
so
yeah.
if we needed to like just dab like the watercolor
Mhm.
palette,
Yeah.
those brown ones wouldn't do anything. So maybe
Yeah.
in the cover there could be a couple rolls of
Okay.
just Bounty or something.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'd hand it
Or
out
in
to
the
each
box.
individual beforehand, because you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
running around trying to hand out stuff.
I'm just practical.
Right, this is
Considering
practical,
it.
yeah.
Anything a quarter
I
efficient,
had
the
so
school's gonna have,
fine.
right? We can't have paper
Right.
towels that clean
No,
up that
that
much.
actually absorbs anything.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
sorry I
they had
interrupted.
their own
Somebody was
rules,
saying
their own
something
stuff.
about
You know,
that.
I think that's where we want to head here. We want to keep